Hey guys, last night a friend of mine had asked me, some of you may know that I had pretty significant change happen in my life about 3 years ago. I got saved when I was like 18 or 19, I think. I don't know, I always knew about Jesus, but I really, started walking after Christ at about 19 in college. But for about 18 years, I feel like I didn't really walk. I feel like I was a baby Christian for a long time, and baby Christian, that's such a weird cliche. I just don't think I was walking in faith in the fullness of what God has for us. And about 3 years ago, I just decided, hey, I'm going to take this crazy, scary step of faith and believe that God really calls, believe God on His Word and walk in faith. And what He says is that we're precious treasures, we're loved by Him. And that was a really scary thing for me to do. And I just want to share a couple verses with you real quick. A friend of mine, she asked, hey, what was the book you read or whatever? What was the impetus? And it wasn't really a book. It was actually a friend shared a verse with me that kind of tied into some others. So here, I just want to share it with you real quick. The first is this issue of righteousness and who we are. I believe that God calls us, He calls us loved. He calls us, when He speaks that you're valuable, His words never fail. He speaks that you're worth it, that you're a saint, that you're pure, that you're, the fullness of the Godhead dwells in us. Greater is He that's in me than he that's in the world, that we've been purified, we've been sanctified. And His word, which is spiritual word, they don't fail. And so there's a verse that says you should be, it's something to the effect, and I'll put the link on right here at this point. But essentially it says, you're not acquainted with the teaching of righteousness or the teaching about righteousness. You're righteous. The world wants to convince you that you're not. Every single thing with your action and your thoughts, we can't go off of what we've done. We just have to go off. And this is the whole concept right here. This is it in a nutshell. Is that we have to go on faith of what God says about us. So let me take you through these verses real quick. The first is James, I think it's 1:23 through 26. And it talks about, it says, you should be a doer of the word and not just a listener, because he who isn't is like a man who looks at his face in a mirror and immediately goes away and forgets what he looks like. But he who looks diligently into the perfect law that gives freedom, and here's the important part, and continues to do so, not forgetting what he's heard, but doing it, he'll be blessed. Now, here's the concept, guys, that for me, what the big deal was, and it ties in with Hebrews chapter 12. Okay, so watch these verses. First, remember the teaching about righteousness. So the whole point of this idea is that you're a saint, you're loved, you're precious, you're valuable, you're so awesome. Your spirit has never sinned. You're just, God calls you this, okay? And so that's who you are. So let's go back to James, okay? So the important part about this James verse is that we take the identity that God gives us, that God says, you are my precious treasure. And it's because I speak that's who you are, that nothing in this world can ever change that, okay? So then when we say, oh, but God, look what I did. I either did something horrible or I did something great. So the horrible makes me bad or the great makes me good. But either of those are fallacies, because what it does is it changes the focus off of what His word says about us to what my words and actions say about me. And see, that's putting myself as king, myself as God. And that is Satanism. Ugh, I hate to say that, but it really is. It's self-worship, okay? You're not God and I'm not God. And the whole point of Christianity is to give God the glory and let God be who He is and let His word be true. So that's the beautiful thing about the gospel, is that He says you're loved. He says that you're valuable. Okay, so we look at James chapter 1. Now, the important part is, this is the key, okay? And we're going to tie in Hebrews here in just a second, is that man who looks at his face in the mirror, that you're loved and you're beautiful and you're wonderful, but then immediately goes away and forgets what he looks like or she looks like. So you can't do that. When we look and God says, hey, you're my wonderful child, you're beautiful, you're precious, you're a treasure, then we need to continue to do that. And that's important, because on a daily basis, we get out of church and we go get in our car and we go out to eat after work. And then, we kind of drive down the road and, oh, they have a nicer car. And that sends a message. Hey, you don't have that car. Or your boss is getting on you and possibly about to fire you. And you're like, hey, you're not worth it because you're not keeping your job, you better work harder. Or whatever the thing is that the world continually attacks us to say, perform, perform, perform. And that's not how God works. See, God says you're just valuable apart from your performance. So we cannot ever, and everybody knows it, we cannot, our deeds are like filthy rags. So we have to go into the future, into our future, based off of what he says about our true identity. So here's the last piece I'm going to talk about. The last piece is Hebrews chapter 12. And it's wonderful because it comes right on the heels of Hebrews chapter 11, which the entire verse is like this awesome set of like recollections about these heroes of the faith. So it says, therefore, he talks about being disciplined, and it says, I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's a long chapter, but I'll hit on a couple key points. Let us throw off the chains that bind us, okay? So it's talking about, look, the world binds you down, and the world chains you down. Don't let the world do that, okay? What we have to do is we have to separate out of this 3 dimensions, this flesh, that want to tempt us to measure. Hey, let's see how good you are. I'm going to put the measuring stick on you. Let's see, how good did you do? How good did you think? How good did you feel? Whatever it is. Look, God calls things that are not as though they were. So he speaks your righteousness in the future. Going back to James, okay? Remember, we have to do this continually. So back to Hebrews. Look at the end of this section in Hebrews. It says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time. I'm skipping back into the middle of this Hebrews section. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but rather painful. But it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace to those who've been trained by it. Please hear this. If you want a life change, you need to take this idea about discipline from Hebrews 11 or 12 and then go back to James and understand that when you look in the mirror and God says you're loved, and then you get in your car and that Ferrari that you're not driving and they are, you see it, and that Ferrari is telling you, hey, you're not valuable enough, you're not status enough, or whatever the thing is. I'm just making an example. You need, and what I understood and what made a difference in my life is I finally said, no, my Father in heaven says I'm loved. My Father in heaven says I'm a precious treasure. And that's what he says about you too. And the world accosts us constantly about trying to say the enemy is the accuser of the brother. And he'll whisper in your ear all the time, hey, you're not this, you are this, because you did, or because whatever. God says you're just valuable, okay? So we need to be disciplined. And so watch, let me just give you the encouragement, is at the end it says, therefore strengthen your feeble arms and your weak knees so that the lame may no longer be disabled but rather healed. Let me just tell you that you get strong, okay? When you walk in this on a continual basis and you start strengthening your faith, then all of a sudden you start getting strong and you're no longer going all the way back to the beginning about you should be eating meat, but you're no longer able, you're not able to, you're still drinking spiritual milk. At this point, you're moving from a place of drinking spiritual milk of just, salvation and the basics of Christianity to the teachings, being acquainted with the teachings of righteousness, which you are righteous. And I want to encourage you to move from a place of just, I'm saved, to a place of I am a son, I am a daughter, I am loved, not because what I did, because of what he says about me. And I'm telling you that as you exercise it, as you continue to look in the mirror, and every day you turn down the enemy and you turn him away and you resist him, you say, I'm not going to believe that because my Father in heaven who calls things that are not as though they were, I'm going to walk in that and walk into my future about, I'm a son, I'm a daughter, I'm loved, I'm valuable. It's nothing to do with what I do. And what happens is your arms and your legs get strong, make level fat paths for your feet so that the load gets easy to carry. So that's what happened in my life, and I'm just telling you, my marriage is phenomenal. Those of you who know me know that when we walk in faith and believe that what God says, when I did that, my life is absolutely changed. So I want to encourage you that you are a son, you're a daughter, you are 100% a treasure to God. That's what he says about you. All right, God bless. Take care. Bye-bye.